you're being too sensitive. You're really overreacting. And so it makes people start to be like, oh, maybe I am. And you start questioning yourself.
Hi, I am Dr. Eleni Busalas.
And I'm Dr. Lauren Fisher.
And today we are talking about narcissism. How do you know you're in a relationship with a narcissist? And have you ever felt like everything revolves around your partner? So follow us on this episode and we will demystify this for you.
Yeah, great topic. I think we need a little wine for this one since everyone is labeling their brother, father, and partner narcissists these days. We've got a lot to take apart. Okay, so our wine, I'm giving a shout out to Amy Eberts, who hosts One Down Wine or Wine Down Wednesday on for Ladies of Alexandria. I met her and she partners with One Hope Winery out in Napa Valley. And this I thought was a very unique wine concept because it's founded on giving back to nonprofits. So every bottle has an impact. So these wine reps developed this whole vineyard and it's all about social impact. So every time there's a bottle purchased, it goes to health or education or the environment. And Amy's our local partner. So if you want to know, we'll put her information in the notes, but she hosts all types of fundraisers from birthdays to like corporate events where you can taste this awesome wine. Well, let's see if it's awesome. We're about to taste it.
Okay.
Ooh, smooth. I do love a good Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into narcissism.
Okay. So unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with narcissists.
You can speak.
I've dated me some narcissists in my life.
Yeah. Well, that's good for real life experience for this one.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of how we do share our personal stories, but also bring in the mental health aspect of it. So the first question is how we throw this concept around. How do you know you're actually in a relationship with a narcissist?
Yeah, because I think in pop culture, there's a couple terms that are becoming very popular, and narcissist is one. And I think from a clinical perspective, we want to talk a little bit about what narcissistic traits are and what narcissistic personality disorder is, because everything's on a continuum. So let's just talk. Tell me a little bit about someone who has narcissistic traits.
Okay,
what does that look like?
So when we look at diagnosing people have traits of everything in a diagnostic manual, but when we meet a certain criteria, that's where you hit the threshold. So key traits, a person has lack of empathy, they have a sense of grandiosity, a need for admiration and attention, a sense of entitlement, they lack self-awareness, things kind of revolve around them, and they often leave you feeling like you're walking on eggshells and that you're the one that's always wrong. Basically, like they don't take ownership of their actions or of anything. It's fault.
Yeah. And what's key here is that when it's a diagnosis, it's a pervasive pattern of behavior that creates impact across all settings. So if someone is truly has or is a narcissist, they will have trouble at work, at home, with their family relationships.
It's a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and then it affects across all settings, right?
Correct.
Yes. And this is a big criteria for a lot of disorders that we diagnose.
Because everyone can have a little charisma, or sometimes they lack empathy in a situation, or they don't take accountability. But we're looking for that to be really consistent and dominant. So they're, again, on the spectrum, people can have some traits, but they still, they could take accountability or they could repair. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think we need to be careful not to just quickly label everybody a narcissist, because that might prevent us from really assessing someone accurately, or doing deeper reflection for ourselves of what happened in that dynamic, why there was confusion or shutdown or whatever may have happened.
So I'm going to just like flip through the 9 traits.
Yeah.
Right? So we have 9 traits when we do diagnosis. We've both been diagnostic testers, doing psycho educational testing. And when we look for criteria, they have to meet for this 5 out of 9. Okay. Across the board. Yes. Okay. Grandiose sense of self-importance. So they have like a sense of their talents are exaggerated. They're very important.
I was the smartest person in the room. They don't know anything. I've gotten this achievement and that achievement. They're going to let you know real soon about it.
Fast. Preoccupation with fantasies of their success, power, brilliance, beauty. So again, kind of this, like what's an example of that? Like, I am going to do all of these things.
Yeah. I'm a successful business owner, even though they've like not had any business that like has lasted, but they are so smart. And this is their next plan. They have all these like grand plans, just overinflated sense of self.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3, belief in being special or unique. So they're different from everybody else. What this one particular person I dated that was a narcissist used to park in the front of every building we went to, whether it was Costco or a concert or a restaurant. I'm going to park right here in front. And now I look back at like, why did I not think that was ridiculous? But that's like a good example.
Wait, explain that to me.
Like we would pull up to Costco and he would just park in front of
Oh, it wasn't a parking spot. Oh, okay. I'm like,
he's special and unique.
Oh, yeah.
This is my spot. I'm parking right in front of Costco, and you just get out of the car and people are looking at you like, what are you doing? And you're like, we're parking here. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was like a really good
example. That's a great example.
Okay. Number 4, need for excessive admiration and constant praise. Sounds like someone in our political environment right now.
Yeah, this may be, not always, but the person who is the center of attention, right? Telling the stories, needs to be around people who are reinforcing their ego. This comes to mind if I had a friend who was dating someone and he constantly needed to be in contact with all of his exes, female friends, his current relationship, and rationalized it, which we'll talk about later, but was also like just needed all the female attention, even though he was just being friends with everybody.
Yeah, that's a good example. Okay, sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of favorable treatment. So that entitled, rules don't apply to me. I'm again special. I'm entitled, and I get to do what I want without consequences.
Yeah.
Okay. Interpersonal exploitative behavior. So taking advantage of others to achieve your own goals.
Yeah.
The conscience, really.
Yeah. I mean, this definitely might, if you've ever had friends that you feel have used you, that might be one of the feelings where someone has befriended you and been a bestie for a bit, got something out of it, was it emotional or some other external goal of theirs, and then they're gone, right? They've gotten money or they got admiration and they're gone. So I think exploiting it without really caring about the other person's feelings whatsoever.
And that's a good telltale sign too. It's like as soon as you don't do what they want, they're gone, or they're threatening abandonment.
Start distancing.
Okay, number 7, lack empathy. So, don't really care how other people feel or understand other people's feelings or care about them. Any other examples on that? No empathy? I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Envy. They envy others, or they believe others envy them. So this is kind of like envy and, negative comparison.
Yeah. If someone's like, yeah, I don't think that person likes you. Well, that's because, they're just jealous of my life and how smart I am and, all of my talents. With women, it might be like, because I'm beautiful. And so they're just jealous. So discounting of others, feelings.
And the last one is arrogant behavior, snobbish attitudes. That's kind of similar to everything we're talking about. But so if you think about this person in your life or in somebody's life close to you, do they carry or display 5 out of 9 of these traits more times in all situations, actually? And it is pervasive.
Yeah. And one of the big things that really is important to highlight is accountability. So when you are speaking to someone with about your feelings or your needs, and you're met with them defending, deflecting, or blaming off the bat, and they're not able to listen, hear, or understand, that's a big telltale. We often hear a lot of people be like, yeah, the person I'm dating never takes responsibility. They never admit they're wrong. Like when I hear that, I'm like, never? I'm like, really? So that's a big one. And you'll find yourself not being able to share things with them to keep the peace.
Yeah, that's right. And you think if they've got all these awful traits, how are they in relationship with people so often? And the thing is that most of the time they're incredibly charming and charismatic, which is how I fell into it.
Yeah, let's talk about how the start of a relationship is with the narcissist, because I think if you saw that up front, you might be like, I'm gone. But do they show all those signs up front?
Oh my God, like right away. So the mother of all narcissists that I dated, it was like, okay, picture this. You walk into like a restaurant or a basketball game, and he would like buy the whole row drinks, or he would buy the table across the way dinner, just for no reason, just, oh, I'm buying them dinner. And, of course, you're like, oh my God, what a generous and kind person. But it was like, again, this need for admiration, this need for attention, this excessiveness, and then this kind of like constant with the charming compliments, and almost like, the love bombing thing, like, you're the greatest thing ever. And, I can't believe like how amazing you are. Like there's a lot of compliment and charming things. But again, the telltale sign is as soon as you don't comply, it flips real quick.
Yeah. And people I've seen can hold this up for weeks and months before it flips. And it's very, very confusing to people because they think they know someone. And I think you're hitting on a very important piece here, right? People are looking for social, outgoing. Often people are social, outgoing, able to get along with others, generous, someone who's complimenting, paying attention to them. So it hits on all these things that are on your like flags list, the green flags, like this is great. But it is over the top. And for those of you who are like pretty balanced and secure relationships, you'd be like, this is crazy. Because love bombing can look like off the bat, like spending every day, texting all day, like after the first date, and those compliments. Oh my gosh, I've been waiting forever. I mean, you're beautiful, you're gorgeous. I've never met anyone like you. I've been waiting. I think we're soulmates. And then by week 2, they're like, I love you. And let's start planning. And so all of a sudden it feels like a whirlwind. Many people report that it's a whirlwind, but you're getting hit with all that oxytocin and serotonin. It feels
Dopamine.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh, this is a high, right?
Yeah. It's exciting if you're used to that pattern.
Yeah.
And it's disorienting if you're not.
That's right. So if you're used to the pattern and you love that, that oxytocin, dopamine, all of that, what happens is it feels so good. It's almost addictive.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, oh, I'm in. And then as soon as you're in and you're just swimming in all that, then the devaluation phase starts. With the little criticism, the little withdrawal, the emotional distancing, the gaslighting. And that's disorienting.
Yeah.
Right? Because you just want to get back to that high. So then you're like, one of the telltale signs, I think, is when you find yourself saying, if I love them enough, they will comply or they will change. If only I do better next time. If only I try harder. If only I don't say that next time, or I don't do this next time. You're constantly in this place of wanting to maintain that high to avoid that crash, that awful feeling.
Yeah.
Distancing.
And I think that like in this middle part where they start to pull away and distance a little bit, if you find yourself questioning and here they're like, you're imagining this. You're being too sensitive. You're really overreacting. And so it makes people start to be like, oh, maybe I am. And you start questioning yourself, even though maybe that's never been you in the past. You're like, I'm not an insecure person. But they often can make you start doubting who you are. And you keep getting those messages. And then you're like, like maybe. So I think always in any relationship, early relationship, one of the most important things that happens is that when you address a concern is how people handle it, to find out if it's safe, you know? Because if someone was distancing and they had an explanation, they would say, hey, I'm sorry, you know, I've been really distracted at work. This is what happened. Instead of being like, you're nuts.
Yeah, so what you're describing is like this intense hot and cold. That's really important. Hot and cold, there's a lot of inconsistency and gaslighting where you're questioning your reality. And on top of the devaluation phase, there's also this control disguised as care, right? Like the jealousy and control disguised as like, oh, the only person that's going to love you as much as me. Like I'm the only one that can love you this much. And initially it starts as a compliment, but then it can be more like, well, you can't get this level of love anywhere else. Again, going back to the grandiosity and the uniqueness. So you start feeling these things.
Yeah. And in some cases, they are really like affecting your relationships with others and keeping you small, you know, keeping you within this control. I want you to myself, but then also I'm like ignoring you and putting you down. So it becomes, and I think this is, you know, the risk with any abusive relationship, right, is that when you get cut off, you're not reality checking with your friends or other people. So you start to live in that world and you start to believe it. You're like, oh, it really is me. And how do I please him? That's what you were saying. How do I please him? How do I keep the peace? How do I get back to that high? Because it was so good. And it was quote unquote good, right? It felt awesome. And I think when someone's like all something, but when they're inconsistent, that's like, it's like, I had this client who once was like, it's like you're at the blackjack table. You win a hand and then you lose a hand, but you just won. So it keeps you going back. So there's just enough to stay in it.
Just enough to stay in it. And then what you mentioned that was really important is the isolation piece. Like there is a part where they start to isolate you from those around you so that you do have less opportunity to, you know, have support, to have connection with others. And so you do question yourself. There's this isolation, which also aligns very much with, we're going to do another podcast on this, on domestic violence, because oftentimes these relationships will become violent. And if they don't become violent, it's still a form of abuse.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like this isolation from your community and your family in order to control you, in order to mentally manipulate you, and in order to be the only voice in your head, right? That can continue the gaslighting. So being aware of that is important.
Yeah. And then we all love the term gaslighting, also, you know, been popularized in media. But like true gaslighting is recounting reality completely different than how you experienced it. And it makes you really question yourself. They'll be like, no, that's not what I saw. That's not what happened. I saw this numerous times happen with one of my friends. And if she's listening, you know who you are. And thank God she's not in that relationship anymore. But like she would be telling me the facts and then he would discount everything. And he was like, that's not how it happened. And she was like, am I crazy? And I'm like, no, you're not crazy. But it took a while until, you know, he left. But that becomes more prevalent in the later stages as well.
Yeah, that's right. And when you're telling people, I call it planting seeds, because when I was in the situation, I was like, no, I'm the crazy one, right? Like, this is not, people don't get it. If only I try harder, that kind of thing. But people were planting seeds. You know, people were saying, no, that's not normal. Like, that's not okay. And there's something wrong here. And I'm, you know, of course, when you're in denial, you're like, no. But I think those little planting seeds, those little voices in my head were helpful at the end.
Yeah.
Right? Of coming out of it.
Well, and you know, here's another thing too. Like, if someone comes in and they're like, hey, yeah, my significant other said I'm crazy. And you know, maybe he's right, because like I start screaming and I'm throwing things. And I'll always ask, is that your historic pattern? And if they're like, no, then I'll be like, because what can happen, and I'm not saying that yelling, getting aggressive and throwing things is appropriate, but because they're like, they cannot be heard, the behavior of the significant other drives people to like get louder, right? So I think that's now, if you've had a historic problem with being unable to regulate your emotions, yeah, it might be you. But yeah. So it's it's reinforcing, right? See, you are crazy. You're screaming. See?
It's like a
Look at me.
prophecy.
I'm calm.
You do become crazy. Yeah. Or act crazier than you normally would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing that is, we hear often is, how do you differentiate between they're just confident rather than they're narcissistic, or if what I said before, if I love them enough, they'll change, or they had a hard past, they had a lot of trauma.
Oh, yeah.
So I should help them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I know how to help them. I can do it. It's not your job. It's not your job to fix someone and help them.
No, that's a really good point. And can we just say another red flag during dating is when they're like, I dated all these crazy women. I'm so glad I met you because you seem so great. But these women went off the hook and they were yelling and screaming and they cut my phone lines. And you're like, oh my God, right? You poor thing. But also wait, why was that happening? And why were you with that person?
Yeah, right. And also understanding their trauma and their behavior doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. Doesn't mean, again, it's not yours to fix. It's not yours to. So look at those patterns like you're saying.
Yeah. And okay, let's say you approach someone about hey, you hurt my feelings. And they're like, no, I didn't. You're overreacting. Now, someone may do that who has a trauma response in that moment, or they can't handle the emotion. But if they're not a narcissist, they'll be able 5-10 minutes later, an hour, to be like, hey, I'm sorry, I shut down, or I blamed you, that wasn't fair, I understand your perspective, and they can repair. So there's a little difference. A narcissist personality pattern is not going to do that. But someone who does that occasionally, it may be more of again, their adaptation to trauma and how they shut down in the moment, or how they handle, emotion or tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's certain things you can do to test this out as well. Number one, I think for narcissists, as well as borderlines, is setting boundaries. That's a good way to figure out if they are. As soon as you set boundaries, they do not like that. Mm-mm. Whether it's time boundaries, physical, psychological, emotional, financial, all of these boundaries, they don't like boundaries. So that's another good indicator. So we were talking about, before we recorded this, can they change? Is change is there hope? What do you think?
Well, we're drinking One Hope wine, and I always hope so. But the reality is, if you have a pervasive narcissistic personality disorder pattern, that means that this has been happening over time, okay? And the people with this disorder have very little insight. It is possible, but it would require really long-term intensive therapy, which most narcissists are not going to do because they don't think there's anything wrong with them, And listen, a lot of this, people are often surprised to hear because they just think they're just arrogant, entitled people. But a lot of people develop this pattern as a reaction to trauma they've had in their childhood, severe criticism, inadequacy, conditional love for, only show up in a certain way. But the adaptation is so well ingrained that they're not conscious of it. They truly believe everyone else is stupid, and that you are crazy. So I've worked with individuals, and it's very, very hard to get them to see. Whereas other adaptations, just in my experience, people can step back and be like, okay, I can see that. So just, a little bit of understanding. We can have sympathy or empathy, for the narcissist. You don't have to stay in a relationship with them and fix them. But, at the end of the day, we're always growing, changing, evolving. And that's what we need in partnerships too. Someone has the capability to have insight and change. So I don't think that severe narcissists who have a history of conflict with others and all these can change. But people who have narcissistic traits, perhaps.
But, to talk about the difference between a personality disorder and a mood disorder, right? Because mood disorders can come and go, depression, anxiety, OCD, PTSD, all of these things. Personality disorders are pervasive, persistent patterns of personality. So it's kind of like saying, oh, I'm going to change my personality. In grad school, we talked a lot about not diagnosing them until at least 18 years old because your personality is more malleable until then. So think about changing a person's personality. It's just pretty hard. And like you said, they don't think they're the problem. It's difficult to find even books written for a narcissist because they won't read them. Yeah. They're written for people in relationship with narcissists.
Yeah.
Like Walking on Eggshells type books. Like that one's for borderlines. But same thing, borderline is a personality disorder as well. So I think that change is only possible, like you're saying, if there are traits and if there's some genuine self-awareness, which is pretty hard to come by in narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
And there has to be an internal motivation too. I have found that whenever narcissists have come into therapy, it is not because they want to change. It is because their wife told them to, the court told them to, the judge told them to, their kids told them. Like, they don't think they're the problem. They're just over there trying to avoid consequences, not actually change. So look at their internal motivation.
Right.
And accountability.
Yeah. And they're often really good at like manipulating therapists too, who aren't experienced, because they'll be like, oh, listen to what my wife did or my husband and they did that, and then you're like, oh my God, you poor thing. So yeah, they manipulate a lot of situations to support their view of self or life. But yeah, some traits and stuff, like, again, look at the whole person, especially as you're dating them, because sometimes it's emotional immaturity. You know, sometimes it's a trauma defense with the way people respond. May not. So don't be so quick to label everything narcissistic. I think we're just we're a population that's quick. However, trust your nervous system, because safe and secure relationships feel calm and they feel good and they're not up and down and inconsistent, and you're not having to work extra hard to make it work. Because they always talk about the over-explaining. You're like trying to over-explain to like calm someone. It should be relatively smooth, no?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Feels calm, yeah.
So, if they're willing to stick through therapy long term, most of them drop out pretty quickly, as soon as there's a boundary set up. And they show that they're being less reactive, or they're more able to have empathy or some stable relationships.
Yeah.
Those are good signs. I mean, as you can tell, I'm pretty pessimistic about that. But I'm just saying, if you want to know, these are some things to look for. Some ability to pause and not react and have some insight. That's another good thing to look for.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an individual decision about what kind of relationship you want to stay in, and how much you can tolerate. Sometimes I do find often with partners that have personality traits that are problematic, the other person is like, well, let me wait and see if they change. And often, again, you said they're not going to want to go to therapy. So if you're asking your partner, you're like, this is really important to me, like we need to work things out, and they're like, nah, I'm not going, it's not me. And then you're like, oh, do I stay in this or not? Well, maybe they'll change. I'll just sit around and wait, or give them some time. And they may actually be trying to change, but it's just hard. So I don't know. What's your tolerance level?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's so hard, like I think, to leave that dopamine high and all of that. But then I tell people, okay, so let's say you can tolerate it. Let's say you decide, I love this person so much, I am willing to tolerate it. I'm going to ask you to think twice about that if you have kids, because essentially you're replicating or you're recreating continuing the trauma, generational trauma, passing it on, teaching them to do that. So then your kids are going to go do that. So it's kind of like, look at what patterns you're displaying, and what patterns you're continuing and what you want to break and change, not just for you, but for the generations that come after you.
Yeah. Also, if you're listening and you haven't thought about this before and you're feeling anxiety, it's okay. like, step back and like really evaluate everything. But also, if you're feeling anxiety or it's resonating with you, that probably means something. And just means to question and really ask yourself, are my needs being met? Like, is this healthy for me? Because honestly, I think a lot of times people really don't know until like they're out. And a lot of times narcissists end the relationship too. They're done, the discard. And I find that often is really hard for people. We see them where they have major depression after, because it's like, we're going to get married, right? We had all these plans, and then they just cut it off. And people often think, oh, I wasn't good enough to hold them. So I think you really have to look at that pattern and how it happens, and be careful not to question yourself. But if you're in that relationship, yeah, just ask. And is any of this resonating with you?
And go talk to a therapist. Go talk to someone that can support you and help be a reality check. Because, the reality part of it gets really warped in these situations.
Yeah. And we're talking primarily about relationships, but they can show up in your friendships and in your coworkers. And, and it'll just say that, like, with often I'll see people that have had a stream of conflicts where they've been fired multiple times, and they'll be like, oh, every supervisor, they don't understand me. I'm just telling the truth. I'm like being able to show people what they need. I can see the system and how it'll work better. But there's this repeated pattern of conflict, and you're the only one that's like the common denominator. So you're going to see that too at work, in all different type of relationships. So, choose who you want to, when you can, choose who you want to engage with.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
On friendship level too. Okay. So do you think we're narcissists?
Absolutely not.
Okay. The truth is absolutely. Okay, good. So we probably have some traits of other disorders, as we all do.
We all do.
What are you going to do? Anyway, so thanks for tuning in today. And, we hope that you have a great day.
Shed some light on this.